the schedule of events that is slated for each year. So the carnivals, the Chairman's Fete does take place this week, and there are a number of events that come up. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be on island to witness most of the carnival offering this year. Of course, you'd know that one of the mainstays of Carnival, which is the Queen Show, is not taking place this year because they've been unable to attract a sufficient number of young ladies into the fete. But they are intending to put it on at a later stage this year to ensure that all young ladies who come on have sufficient time to prepare for the Queen Show. This is the first carnival that is taking place since 2019. So of course there are very high expectations on the part of everybody in the community as to what happens and what takes place this year. And the carnival committee, who is for the most part filled with a lot of very new faces, would be trying their best to ensure that they execute Carnival as best as possible. August Monday, of course, is one of the feature events, and they just told me who the starring artist is, but I can't disclose that until they do. So I'm sure that the committee will become a lot more forward-facing, and will be able to answer all of your concerns when they do their Carnival preview.
One of the criticisms constantly you're hearing, especially like last year, we know that Carnival was happening this year, is the low participation. So what happened in terms of our promotion and getting persons to come on board? Because the numbers are really, really low. Like you mentioned, the Miss Anguilla pageant will be held later in the year. We have 3 contestants for the talented teen. One song this year from the Calypsonians. So it's really not much going on. You know, it's almost as if Carnival doesn't even make sense to say, you know, because it seems as if more of the hype is linked to the private shows as opposed to the shows in the Carnival Village.
Yes, well, Carnival is the responsibility of the committee, so I expect that the committee will be able to pull off what is necessary. We will be looking at reviewing and getting a report based on what happens from this Carnival, and then making some decisions as it relates to Carnival 2023 after this Carnival is off. Of course, we would need to get some data about what happened and what transpired this year, and then taking that information into 2023.
I agree with Felicia. Previously, by this stage, before Carnival, we know all that's going on. This year, I know practically nothing that's going on. We really haven't been hearing any information.
Yes, that is quite unfortunate, but it is under the ambit of the committee and the Department of Youth and Culture to bring that information to you. I can push and I can try to nudge, but of course we will be using the feedback that we've gotten from this run-up to Carnival, and we will be doing some reforms in 2023.
Does government assist the private shows and funding the private shows?
Government did at one point assist with the private shows. I know that in 2020 we did give some assistance because the regular scheduled shows were not being put on the calendar, and therefore we were able to assist the private shows somewhat. Unfortunately, this year we are not able to do so because the regular scheduled Carnival events are back on schedule, and the funding allocated to Carnival would not have allowed us to do both. And so we haven't given any monetary support in terms of the private shows this year.
Thank you, Minister. And certainly I too want to wish the best for our Director of Sports, who is recovering from a motor vehicle accident. Minister, you're up.
Thank you, Premier. I just want to share a few bits of information with the listening public. You know, every year around the major festivals, carnival and so forth, the Immigration Department announces a relaxed period of entry. So the Anguilla Immigration Department will be relaxing its immigration procedures for nationals of St. Martin, Saint-Martin, beginning Friday, July 22nd to Sunday, August 7th, 2022. During this period, nationals and residents of St. Martin, Saint-Martin, who are not in possession of passports will be allowed to enter Anguilla on a valid French or Dutch ID. Nationals from other Caribbean islands who are residing in St. Martin, Saint-Martin, and requiring visas for Anguilla will be exempted from the visa requirements for the same period. However, they must show proof of legal residency in St. Martin, Saint-Martin. Boat captains must ensure that all persons traveling to Anguilla are properly manifested and accounted for, and all entries into Anguilla must be at an official port of entry. All persons entering must adhere to the established COVID-19 protocols. So that is the first major bit of information I want to share with you this afternoon. And then, in terms of jobs being advertised in Anguilla, there has been complaints that the properties and other business establishments advertise their job vacancies overseas. That is their right to do so, but they also have a requirement under the law to also advertise in Anguilla. And we cannot tell employers to go to Radio Anguilla or Cool FM or Class FM. They have a choice as to where they choose to carry their advertisements. But what we are doing as a Ministry and Department of Labor is ensuring that all advertisements that come in are advertised on the Department of Labor's Facebook page. And we're encouraging persons to visit the page and like it. I think that's a jargon for the social media, to like the page so that whenever they put out notifications of new jobs, it will pop up on your feed or whatever the mechanism is. So that is one way that persons can keep up to date with all the jobs that are being advertised. And we are also hoping very soon to have these jobs advertised on the government's LinkedIn page as well. Government has now established a LinkedIn page, so we're looking to have those advertisements aired there as well. So in addition to the various media outlets, you can be sure to find advertisements on the Department of Labor's Facebook page, and very soon we are going to be adding those advertisements to the government's LinkedIn page as well. The third announcement, I hesitated a bit about this because it is not my intention to engage in a back and forth on this. But you will recall last Wednesday I was on Keystone Graves on Talk Anguilla, and I spoke at length about a recent incident involving a Vincentian national in Anguilla, who it was reported that was given an axe to leave. I said then, and I maintain, that no axe to leave was given. I want to highlight this afternoon this important information because there have been attempts being made to malign my character and the character of the Chief Immigration Officer and her officers in the Immigration Department. And this is detestable. And I say that very, very strongly. Under the Passport and Immigration Act, the Chief Immigration Officer can only grant time up to 1 year at any one point in time, after which persons are required to break their stay and return to the island. It is unfortunate that this issue that could have been dealt with between the Ministry and the Department of Labor and Immigration was taken to social media. It's really unfortunate. But I want to reiterate here this afternoon, the Ministry of Labor, the Department of Labor the Department of Immigration and the Ministry of Home Affairs, we are there to help. And certainly we encourage anybody who's having issues with immigration or labor matters to come in and let us have a conversation about it. That is basically all I'm prepared to say on that matter today. Thank you very much. Oh, one other announcement though. I will be on Cool FM on Thursday at 11:15 a.m. speaking with Brother Lee, so you can tune in for that as well.
Will you be sending out that immigration notice that you read out?
Yes, the Immigration
send
Department
it
will
out?
be publishing it.
Please, thank you.
Yeah, they will be publishing it, yes, yes.
Mr. Hodge, last week you were on Talk ANGUILLA Rebranded, and you also spoke about the physical planning bill, and you said some persons are using the bill to create mischief. What are some of the contentious issues within the bill that persons might not be in favor with? What are some of the contents in the bill?
So, Felicia, that matter came up because it was raised at a press conference, and I took that opportunity to say that our planning legislation is woefully outdated. That legislation goes back as far back as 1965 and 1945, if I can recall correctly. So it is outdated. At some point in time, we have to bring it back as an administration to revise and bring it back to the people of Anguilla. At this point in time, that is not on the cards anytime in the immediate future. And at such time, when we decide to do that, certainly, we will invite the media and other entities to weigh in on that matter.
This is outside your presentation, but as Labor Minister, we know that we have almost 300 students getting ready to leave school. We know this is a very tough climate we are now in. What are the plans of the Labor Department to help our young people find employment at this time?
Well, a number of the properties, as you know, engage in job fairs, and certainly we encourage our young people to participate in those job fairs. And I'm not sure this year if they are doing it, but I know every year the careers department at the comprehensive school will engage in a number of training sessions for the persons leaving school to expose them to the job market, what opportunities are available out there. And I know there also have been careers fairs being held. I'm not sure if there's one being held this year. But certainly from the Ministry and Department of Labor, we continue to work with the various properties to see what opportunities are available and make sure they are properly advertised and that persons here have an opportunity to apply. And I will say, though, as well, a number of the properties have been hiring quite a few young persons to their staff complements as well. So they are playing their part in helping to find employment for our young people.
Dr. Webster, Ms. Kentish left, and I wish I remember this question, but it's tied to your ministry, but it's linked to Carnival. We're hearing a number of persons involved in the troops say that they now have to pay duties for their costumes. What can you tell us about this?
I have seen there were some requests that have come in, late of course, requesting concessions, and we are actually looking at them in the Ministry of Finance, because that's usually where they would come along with what the duty loss would be and things like that. We've certainly given a lot of duty concessions. It has to go through Executive Council and then the House. So in terms of the specifics, I can't answer right now, but I know certainly I've seen some requests coming in.
Okay. Can you give us an update as it relates to government's discussion between, with ANGLEC and the Water Corporation? What is the latest?
I was going to get to that, but certainly that's good. I am, representing the Minister for Infrastructure and Tourism and the Honourable Hayden Hughes, who's aware on government business. And So we do know, are familiar with that, and ANGUILLA's new CEO is stating that the Water Corporation owes ANGUILLA over 13 million EC dollars. We have not confirmed the number as yet, but certainly it's in that range from what we hear. And that's a historic debt. Didn't start in the last 2 years. Water has been trying to meet its current obligations, and because the chairman, Mr. Kennedy Hodge, did indicate that there's a lot of leakage in the piping network, the revenue seems to be less than the expenditure. And so it's difficult for them to pay the current bill and also set up a payment plan for arrears. Government has been utilizing whatever funds available to help the Water Corporation to stay current or to contribute to their electricity bill since last December, where $4 million was paid on behalf of Water and S.A.F.E. The environmental levy of 7%, which usually ANGUILLA would collect for the government of Anguilla, government has not collected from ANGUILLA since November of 2021. And the concerns here is that ANGUILLA is stating that the government of Anguilla owes the money that the Water Corporation owes. Now, technically that's not correct, but certainly the government of Anguilla knows that water is an essential service and will assist wherever we can. So with that, we have been speaking with ANGUILLA. ANGUILLA has since cut the electricity to the Water Corporation, who is now, and since the 11th of July, and the Water Corporation is now under generator power, their own generator. And that is concerning because that's not sustainable. You know, the cost of diesel for the Water Corporation, you know, is similar to diesel that has to be bought by ANGUILLA. Now, in this case, it's redundant because ANGUILLA has to still run the generators to supply power, whether the Water Corporation is on the grid or not. And so that seems to now cause increased concerns because now Water Corporation has to buy diesel to run its generator. Government of Anguilla now has to help in that regard. ANGUILLA has, as has been stated by the new CEO, is bankrupt and has difficulty meeting the cost of its fuel supply. And the request is for government to do that. So we continue discussions, certainly at all levels. And we hope that this can be resolved in short order, where we continue to have a continued supply of electricity to all services, customers, businesses in Anguilla, because water is an essential service. And I think that that needs to be noted. Government of Anguilla takes note of that. Electricity is an essential service, and that's also a concern that government of Anguilla has pertaining to ANGUILLA's ability to meet that obligation. ANGUILLA has a monopoly, of course. Now, I just want to state for the record that this administration is hell-bent on getting renewable energy supply of electricity in Anguilla. And I think ANGUILLA is of similar thought. The concerns here would be how that would be done. We feel that it is necessary, given the financial status of ANGUILLA, that we have an investor or investors provide the renewable energy supply, and then that ANGUILLA distributes it through a power purchase agreement or other mechanism. ANGUILLA is of the opinion that they'd start with 8 megawatt supply. Our peak megawatt usage right now in Anguilla is about 14, so that would be just over half. And that with that, they can then decrease the cost of producing electricity and then expand over time. We would be more minded to have this as we have an investor build a farm, solar, wind, or whatever means of renewable that caters not only for a peak but also for our projected need, so about 20, 25 megawatts, and then go that route. So these talks continue, at the ANGUILLA level, the board level, the CEO level, government level, and we also have certainly an administering power that would be certainly minded to know that we continue to provide these services, water and electricity in Anguilla.
Have you in fact been talking with any investors for this purpose?
Certainly. Both the government of Anguilla and ANGUILLA has been, has entertained potential investors since we, came in June of 2020. There were at least 2 companies that, ANGUILLA was talking to that we were brought in on. There are several companies and investors that government of Anguilla has spoken with and jointly with ANGUILLA. And there are at least 2 companies that, that have spoken with the government of Anguilla that ANGUILLA was not minded to speak with. And we've also had Zoom calls with potential investors. It just shows you the level of, there's a level of interest there, and there's also an intention of this administration to make sure that renewable energy gets to Anguilla in the very near future so that we can decrease the cost of electricity. If we notice, ANGUILLA has sent out notice that the fuel surcharge will go up to 70 cents per kilowatt hour starting the 1st of August. Now that is, if you look at the impact that will have on consumers, on the people of Anguilla, that is, and the businesses, that's very concerning. But they found it necessary given the cost of fuel has increased significantly. ANGUILLA did raise the fuel surcharge before to 25 cents back last January. And that's what's happening. As the price of fuel goes up, the legislation allows ANGUILLA to increase the fuel surcharge to match. But again, those numbers means that the cost of living increases exponentially with the increase in the cost of electricity.
Back to the investors. That's why I asked the question, because I knew you had been talking to people. But if you've been talking for the last year or 2 years, why hasn't anything been established or finalized?
And it takes 2 to tango. And ANGUILLA has a monopoly. So any electricity, production, ANGUILLA has to have a say in it. And, certainly, we've had some issues with getting it moved forward. We will get closer.
Dr. Webster, the situation surrounding the water corporation seems to be a double whammy. They don't have any supply of electricity, yet they have to find money that they don't have to pay for the diesel, and I'm sure government has to come into the mix to help fund that aspect to get diesel. You mentioned that discussions are still ongoing with ANGUILLA, but what is the conversations like? Does government have the ability to pay now? What is the issue in terms of government's inability to pay? So that the water corporation can actually have electricity and to come off of the generator. What is the holdup?
What is the holdup in terms of government paying for water so that they cover?
Paying ANGUILLA, yes, so that the problem can at least be
I'm sure, Felicia,
solved.
you'll remember, that when we came into office in June of 2020, that Anguilla was bankrupt. There was no money in the treasury. The country was closed down. COVID-19 was real, and our main economy, tourism, was at zero. So over time, with God's help and with the opening the country in the phased manner that we have, tourism has come back, not where it was previously, but it's come back some. We now have American Airlines here, which has increased access. And so that gave us some money that we were able to keep the country open, provide the services that were necessary. But our fiscal space is very narrow. And so we recently felt it necessary to give a cost of living benefit. We're understanding ANGLEC's situation. We put $6 million into ANGLEC to cover domestic households, their electricity at $500 each month for 2 months. We gave, concessions. We have given the $500 food vouchers to those 70 years and older. We have increased the benefits by 25% for those families that are vulnerable, that are on, welfare.
Okay.
And we felt that, if you think about that, that's up to $15 million. That is money that is not necessarily there, but has to be, we project that we can raise that. We do have a facility at the Caribbean Development Bank of $13 million that we can access. And these are there, but the government, there's still other services that have to run. We can't just take every penny and throw it into the water corporation or into ANGLEC.
I understand that. Okay, so on the back end, what is ANGLEC saying? How much are they asking for, or what amount they will be willing to accept from government in order to get the water corporation back?
ANGLEC would like for the water bill to be current and to have monthly payments with an interest rate to cover the arrears. And that's, so that we continue discussions in that regard. Certainly we would like to see both entities function and flourish. As I said earlier, the environmental levy, which ANGLEC collects on behalf of the government of Anguilla, we have not required them to pay that, allowing them to use that as part of the cash flow. And, we do hope that we can come to an amicable settlement in this regard. We continue to work with ANGLEC and the Water Corporation.
ANGLEC have said that the surcharge is supposed to be actually over $1 and change, so they are still absorbing a significant cost as it relates to the fuel surcharge. You did also say that it's concerning because, the increase will come in effect on the 1st of August. And GST is still a concern for many persons. We know government's supposed to be going to the House again to make some amendments. What is the latest update as it relates to any amendments to GST and the feedback, especially from the tourism sector?
Uh, well, I mean, I watch social media also, but you know, it's kind of ironic that we talk about, you know, government funding ANGLIC and funding water and funding this and funding that, but we also don't want to, you know, provide the revenues that are necessary to make these things happen. You know, the GST is a broad-based tax that was put in place to, you know, to have a predictable revenue so that we can do some of these services, so that we can cover the vulnerable, medical treatment overseas, you know, the essential services of, you know, teachers, police, you know, fire. And, you know, it just seems that on one hand we say government should be doing this and taking care of that, but we don't want to, you know, have in place the necessary frameworks that help that to happen. That's what's concerning to me. You know, certainly, you know, whether GST is the right method to do that or not, I'm not going to question that at this time, because experts such as CARTAC, the IMF, these international and regional agencies said that was the one that would work best for Anguilla, and we have to see it happen, see what happens with it. You know, on August the 20th, we'll know what the first returns show, and we'll have an idea of how to project what the GST will do for Anguilla. In terms of the tourism sector, I've seen, you know, some, you know, social media posts that said it will destroy tourism in Anguilla. Same thing was said back in 2011 when the ISL, the Interim Stabilization Levy, came in, that it would destroy Anguilla. We've survived, sometimes by the skin of our teeth, but we have survived. Sometimes underwater most of the time, but skimming water. But Anguilla is here. You know, I heard, you know, Prime Minister Mia Mottley say the other day when she announced the cost of living benefit that seems so similar to what we did here in Anguilla in terms of, you know, the approach of, you know, removing the VAT from the first 250 kilowatt hours of electricity. We did that for the first 130 kilowatt hours. You know, removing the VAT from this basket of food items, essential. She named off the 45 different food items. We'd done similar to that. I mean, we probably were not as explicit, but she described it as a pathway to survival. And I just would like the people of Anguilla to know that that is what it has been for us from the day one. When on June the 30th of 2020, when we came into office, it has been a pathway of survival for the people of Anguilla. And I think that we have done a hell of a good job with what we were given, what we met, to keep Anguilla where it is in COVID, post-Irma, with negative, you know, when we came in, we were not even at zero in the Treasury. We were at negative $23 million. And so that's why I would say that you know, we have continued to look out for the well-being of the people of Anguilla. In terms of amendments, we certainly, and you know the debacle that happened on Friday, because I'm sure that, you know, just the facts would have tried to spin it the way they want to. You know, we went to the House on Friday to pass a bill, an amendment to the GST Act, that would allow us there'd be no GST on water, piped water from the Water Corporation. With this, there was also the motion to, and this was necessary to do that amendment so that locally produced bottled water would not attract GST. Stepwise process. The leader of the opposition, you know, stood up and pointed out that there was no quorum in the House. Now the Constitution, which is the law, the supreme law of the land, allows the House to meet without a quorum unless it is pointed out by someone who is in attendance. So it's not illegal to be in the House if you don't have 9 members present. And so that this is important work that needed to be done so that we can decrease the burden of the GST on persons, because we feel that local manufacturers of bottled water, that they should get some benefit. So there's no GST on the raw materials coming in, and we explained that, and that went to the House previously for the manufacturing sector. And we just wanted to now make sure that there was no GST on the bottled water when it was being sold, as long as it's produced in Anguilla. And that's what the intent was. So we still hope to get that done. We will, the House will meet again soon, and then we will try to advance that. And the other amendments coming that we were looking at is in terms of insurance. And that's what we've always said, that when there are issues that come up, we will address them and look at what the impact that they have, the financial implications, and see how we can adjust and make amendments. So there are concerns about GST on property insurance and auto insurance, and with the hurricane season coming, there was concern that persons not wanting to pay GST on the premiums would not insure their homes or cars, and so that is something that we taken into consideration.
ANGUILLA has taken some serious measures to cut back on their expenditure. Most people on the island have also cut back on maybe going to restaurants, maybe the amount of fuel they use, maybe some of the foods that they don't actually need. Everybody's cutting back. So this has led me to my question: what measures are the government taking to cut back on your functioning within the various departments and so on? What measures are being taken to cut back as well? I'm sure there are some, but...
That is correct, and that's a good question. And government has been looking at ways that they can cut back. They were leaving the lights on, leaving the ACs on. That is now being pushed. And that is something that the different the unions and associations are now being encouraged to do, to make sure that the employees or make sure to decrease the loss due to leaving lights on, leaving the air conditions on. So that's important. Cutting back on the amount of traveling that needs to be done when the vehicles, because you have to look at the cost of fuel. In terms of staffing, the natural attrition. So when someone is at the age of retirement, that they retire and they're not replaced. Redeployment of some persons in the system. When a department needs persons, that you move persons that's already in government rather than hiring new people. So these are some of the efforts that are ongoing. And we also look at, in terms of efficiency, some departments may have more people than they need, and there's some that do not have enough persons. And so we move around. The public administration, the deputy governor is looking at those areas constantly. In Inland Revenue Department right now, they needed more people. You need supply officers to be able to go out and look at the stores and the businesses to make sure they're compliant. And that is being done with persons from in the system. Looking at those who need to be doing auditing, again using persons already there, retraining, retooling, and so I think that there are a lot of efforts being done in that regard. Now, there are some areas where the personal emoluments had to go up, especially teachers. When they reach a certain certification, they have to be paid accordingly. And that, we had to do that just now with a supplementary budget to make sure that was covered. Also, these are the areas that are being worked on to make sure that we decrease the cost. And there are other measures that are under consideration.
Honourable Premier, I think that we are looking very serious at the government. I know that you have stated some things that you're doing there as a leader and as the government. But we need to face the fact that we are spending more than we receive. We are spending more than we receive. And we need to look in areas of government paying rent for buildings. We need to start merging some of these ministries. And I'm wondering if it's between ANGUILLA and the water company, these statutory bodies, are they dictating to the government what we should do, or the government tell them how we should, how things should be running? Because to me, that is what I'm seeing, some political play out instead of good departments or statutory body running efficiently as they should. Do we need these statutory bodies? If they're failing, we don't need them. It's just a department of government. And the government should run those departments and run it efficiently. We have people, the public service. And we know that complaint have been for years that the public service is too large. What are we doing to look at the public service? We try to go out into the public service, the private sector, to pay the public servants, and that cannot happen no more going down the road. It has to have a balance, wherein the public service is able to, as we said, have productivity. Are we having productivity going in our government areas?
Yes, Mr. Pickering, you asked a very good question. I want to answer that question. And I would like to indicate that in my last years in the public service, I was actually head up a public sector reform program, which was dealing with exactly the things you're talking about. There was an efficiency review done back in 2011 that spoke to things like merging of departments. We have some father-summing departments across the public service. Do we need father-summing heads of departments and father-summing deputies when some of these departments could be merged? As I said, I was in charge of the public sector reform program. I left, and since I've come back, I have been very open, vocal, and public with the need for us to undertake, continue, and go through a public sector reform program in ANGUILLA to address precisely the things you're talking about: increased levels of efficiency, effectiveness, using technology. Do we need to start in a long line? Can we pay stuff online? So I am telling you, we are on the same page. We are, this administration, and me in particular, even though the public service is not under my ambit, I have been vocally and very loudly championing the need for this to happen. And I've been assured that very soon we're going to be seeing some results in this regard. So your point is well taken. This administration is aware of this, but again, we have to put a pressure on the Deputy Governor and the Governor's office, who is in charge of the public service, to begin to put these things in motion.
The other thing that I think that government need to look at is these medical emergencies. All of us will have need of that sometime, point in time. But I'm asking, do we have any way of means of recovering part or some of that money that the government spend? Because these people who send out, you just pay for it and they just go home happily after these things have happened, and nothing comes back to to the treasury, so at least we can have something for maybe the next person going. At least that would help to alleviate that challenge.
So you make a good point. Certainly, the forms are signed by family members, but as you said, the operative word used there is emergencies, and so you can't sit and haggle, at the time when someone is in dire need of being flown out or getting treatment to, prolong their life. And so these are things that need to be reviewed, of course, and worked on, whether there has to be collateral held for these. Certainly we rely on the goodness of the family members that if they can pay, they will pay. But because it's difficult, maybe we have to revise that, and then there is a cap on how much each person would be given or would be utilized for their care going out and being taken care of. So these are all things that are on consideration, but again, we do have a culture in Anguilla of caring for each other, and we certainly do not want it to seem that we're restricting care to someone who is in need of it, especially in emergency situations. Getting back to your earlier statements, very timely and understood. Rent of buildings, we have looked at that. Certainly understanding that, some of these buildings, there are mortgages at the bank, and to reduce what government pays sometimes basically would mean those loans are in worse state than they are, because some of them are still in bad loans in terms of their position. And so for government to now, reduce payments, it certainly, each of these, each decision that is made has, repercussions. And it's hard to look at these situations and make certain decisions which would be prudent, but it's you look at the impact that would have on the rest of society, and in terms of being able to employ persons, being able to pay mortgages, being able to keep the bank up and decrease the level of non-performing loans. So these are everything is intertwined, and as government, we are tasked by the people of Anguilla to make the decisions necessary to, look out for their well-being. You made a statement earlier that we spend more than we make. I don't think that is the case in normal situation. Certainly in crises it is. Irma, the fall of the two indigenous banks, the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009, the COVID-19 pandemic. But I think, government is set up where you have to have a balanced budget. And that balanced budget would entail that we don't, spend more than we make, all things considered. And so we do want to make sure that, we don't prejudice one sector against the next, because you start saying that the private sector is paying for the public sector, then you start these rifts that are artificial, but then they then lead to a danger in society, and we won't really sanction that.
Honourable Premier, I don't think that is putting a rift between the public and the private sector. Every time something that isn't the government need is a tax coming out to the private sector. That is what it is looking like. And I have listened to your comments. We have been kicking this can can down the road for a very long time. That is why I made that bold statement. We are spending more than we receive, and one day it's going to catch up with us. That is what has catch up with us over the years. We have been kicking, we've been looking at credit budgeting. What we were doing since 2000 was credit budgeting, and now it catch up with us. So it is not that I'm saying we are spending more than we receive, and that is credit budgeting. We are not budgeting to what we have received, and that is why we end up with the problem that we have today. Regardless of this financial fallout and all these things, if we were managing our resources, our financial resource, we would not have been in this deep hole. We would have been in a hole somewhat, but not so deep that now even a life rod is being extended to us and we can't even reach the life rod. Because look at how the water cooperation finds itself today. It is because for a long time we haven't been addressing that problem. ANGUILLA is the same thing. We need to address the problem and be bold enough to take the necessary decision for it to go on. So I am saying that, as we go forward, we need to look at these things, right? We need to understand, look at the true position of ANGUILLA, what it owes, and how payment is managed. That is what the nation needs to know and look at. What we owe and how we are managing the payment for that. That is what needs to come out to us so that we would know that if you generate a tax, we know what we are paying for and where it is going. And not just to say a tax and we don't know what this tax is for. Because I could remember the vehicle tax that came up very early after 2000. It was to do certain things. It was to enhance the Chamber of Commerce and help the government. But the Chamber of Commerce have not been enhanced, and the government have not think, where is this money gone? How it is being taken? So we need to look at those things very seriously. And last, before I close, I want to, at least, we talk so much about the Royal Anguilla Police Force, but I was evident a week ago to notice 2 patrolling officers through the valley, and they have been doing a very good job, and I spoke with them. As a matter of fact, there was an incident where they had to intervene and settle it very amicable. And I want to commend the Royal Anguilla Police Force for these beat duties, police that are now out and in our communities, and they are attending to the problems and the challenges there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you pointing out the good things. Certainly there are a lot of bad things, that we are tasked with fixing. And as you said, the can has been kicked down the road. Certain administrations were straitjacketed. They couldn't, bend to pick it up. But we have been tasked with that, and certainly, we are competent, capable, and we are doing the job that the people sent us here to do. In that regard, I just wanted to, point out, some of the projects that are coming on stream for the Ministry of Economic Development, and the sale of the Four Seasons property, and that is going to happen fairly soon. The Cove Castles. We are working on an MOU for Cove Castles. That has been laid down for a long time. Savannah Bay project, the MOU is near completion. Annie Villa Shoal Bay, the MOU for that is completed, and that's about to get started. And Altima Marina, MOU is signed for that. And Rendezvous Beach project that is being worked on. And so there's still a lot of interest in Anguilla. We did have some concerns by potential investors as to the stability of the government and the social unrest Those have all been, basically rectified, and we are here continuing to do the job. And I know when these projects come on stream, Anguillians will have work opportunities. The question that was asked about the students coming out of school in the near future, we want to make sure that they have a place here in Anguilla to work, to raise families, to make a living, and that the brain drain stops and then is reversed. That is, Anguillians abroad would want to come back home. That is the plan that we are working with.
Can I just ask, when you have an MOU that you're signing, at one time the press used to be invited to those MOUs. That doesn't matter, but could we please have some kind of press release about it so that we know it's happened and what it involves? Thank you.
Certainly, we will make sure that that is happening, yes.
Just a quick question, Dr. Webster. You mentioned that Four Seasons is up for sale. How much money does government intend to receive from the sale of Four Seasons?
I don't know what the sales price would be, but certainly based on the, how it's usually done, it's 5% stamp duty and then percentage for the alien landholding license. And that varies depending on what is negotiated. But the sale should happen within the next few weeks. I want to thank everyone for your patience and certainly your very probing questions. It shows that we all have an interest in making sure that the government is, kept to task and that the people of Anguilla, their interests are paramount. And so I want to thank you again for coming. And as I said, we usually would be the first and third Monday in the month, but since August Monday is a holiday, we probably won't be talking again until the 8th of August. Unless something comes up, of course, and of course you'll find us. Thanks again for coming, and I wish you the best, and thanks to Radio Anguilla, the Anguillian, the Daily Herald, KCN Channel 4, to Dites, of course, the Minister's Parliamentary Secretary, the liaison for the Spanish-speaking community for being here today, and the ministerial assistants. Thanks again, and may God bless you, and stay safe out there.